the mayor mentioned, also over 10,000 units were needed during the 2020 to 2025 planning period. And interestingly, over 14% of our households are doubled up, meaning we have more than one family per household. The purpose of the bill before you today is to increase housing opportunities and address these issues for island residents and create more long-term housing. The mayor's initiative is basically repealing the transient rental use in the apartment zoning district. And as of July 1st, 2025, they would need to cease operation in West Maui and January 1st, 2026 for all of Maui County. I'd like to start off talking about a little bit about the general plan. You may know that the general plan is composed of the countywide policy plan, the Maui Island plan, and various community plans, and really represents the direction for the county in moving forward and its goals and policies for the future of Maui County. I think there's some important policy aspects and goals that talk about housing as well as TVR policy that I'd like to raise. The general plan talks about a lot of other issues, but importantly, the zoning code, which is Title 19, is an implementation tool of the general plan. And what we have before us is an amendment to that title, so it's important to look at the policies that talk about housing and TVR use in looking at a proposed ordinance. The county-wide policy plans, and I'm not going to read all of these, but highlighting talks about expanding housing opportunities and the need, recognizing housing as a basic human need and a need to work to fulfill that effort. A couple of policies are interesting in limiting the number of visitor accommodation units and facilities in community plan areas, as well as maintaining a sustainable balance between the resident, part-time resident, and visitor populations. The Maui Island plan goes a little bit further there and actually discourage the supplanting of existing island housing to visitor accommodations that may have a negative impact on long-term rental housing price and housing and price of land. Another policy of the Maui Island plan is to actually cap the number and type of visitor accommodations that can be permitted and manage the number and type of visitor accommodations that can be permitted. There are a variety of community plans, and within the West Maui community plan, it actually takes that step a little bit further by actually proposing amendments to the county historic district ordinances to allow existing hotels but prohibit new vacation rentals and phase out existing vacation rentals that are not hotels or inns. Phasing out could be accomplished by counting vacation rentals towards short-term rental home permit caps or by attrition. Also noting that the proposed legislation to amortize the short-term occupancy list and phase out short-term rental use to make more housing units available for long-term occupancy. So these are important policies within our general plan that prescribe a future for Maui County related to housing and TVR policy. Importantly, it's also important to recognize the importance of visitor serving accommodations and visitor serving uses to Maui County as well. I would be amiss not to mention there are policies within the countywide policy plan and Maui Island plan to recognize the important contributions that the visitor industry makes to the county's economy and to support a healthy and vibrant visitor industry. I'd like to real quick just talk about short-term rental homes and how they differ from transient vacation rentals. Sometimes folks get it mixed up, so I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing here. Short-term rental homes are actually require a permit approval by the director of the Planning Commission. They have conditions that govern operations, whereas TVR use, on the other hand, I'll talk about TVR as an acronym for transient vacation rentals. TVR use, is provided without permit. In other words, you need a permit for short-term rental housing, which is typically on single-family residential, but you don't need a permit for transient vacation rentals in apartment districts, provided that, and it's just an important aspect, is that the structures were permitted prior to April 21st, 1989. Short-term rental housing units are permitted in a variety of zoning districts, mainly those with single-family residential, whereas TVR use is permitted in a very limited number of zoning districts and in the apartment district which we're talking about today. Within short-term rental housing units are also capped per the community plan area. In fact, there's allowed 195 total countywide of short-term rental housing units. 173 of those are currently operating as of April 2024. Transit vacation rentals, on the other hand, do not have a cap. So they can operate, provided, again, they are in buildings that were actually constructed prior to 1989 in the apartment district. Short-term rental housing units occur on lots with basically single-family residential, as I noted, And TVR can occur in multifamily structures that have a number of dwelling units. I'd like to start or talk a little bit about the legislative history of TVR use in the apartment districts. In 1960, Maui adopted its first comprehensive zoning ordinance, at that time allowed or established the apartment districts, of which the A3 apartment district at that time allowed a transient use called motel. In 1968 was the first time we changed to actually an A1 and A2 apartment districts, which we have today. Within the A1 and A2 that was established in 1968, transient use of motel was also continued, in addition to allowing for multiple family residential as well. In 1981 was our first ordinance that defined TVR, and also created Chapter 19.37 time-sharing plans, which allowed TVR use in apartment and hotel districts. The motel use also continued as a transient use in A1 and A2 zoning districts. 1989 was a significant milestone for the county in regards to TVR use, as that was the first time that the county actually started to restrict or try to remove TVR use from the apartment districts. The actual land use designation of motel use was removed from the A1 and A2. We added a purpose to the apartment district to establish that the apartment district should be used for long-term rental housing. We also, that definition of long-term rental housing was for 6 months or more per year. Importantly, though, in 1989, there was also a recognition that multi-unit buildings built prior to 1989, actually April 1st of 1989, may continue to operate their transit vacation rental use as a lawful non-conforming use. In 2014 and through 2023, that exception was codified, and then additional requirements for qualifying for that 1989 exception were added. Our current ordinance today allows TVR use in apartment A1 and A2 districts. Again, as I mentioned, the structure must have been constructed prior to April 21st, 1989, and meet other criteria. Owners, of course, have to pay a higher real property tax, also transient accommodation tax and general excise tax associated with the short-term rentals that they're doing. And any structures built in the apartment districts after 1989 are not permitted to accommodate TVR use any longer. I might also note, it was interesting, in the 1960s and 1980s, there was a relatively large number of zone changes that occurred both in West Maui and South Maui, changing single-family residential to apartment districts. The purpose of that was obviously to change from single-family to allow multifamily and or TVR. You may have heard, of course, of the Minatoya list that the mayor had mentioned. These are the apartment district properties allowed to be used for short-term occupancy. This is a list of known structures in the apartment districts that meet the criteria to operate TVR. According to the department's list, we have a little over 7,000 units, of which 6,300 units are assigned an RPT tax classification of short-term rental housing. That list, that Minatoya list, by the way, is part of the actually located on the Planning Department's website, on the County of Maui's website, and the Planning Department's main page. In summary, the general plan recognizes the importance of housing and meeting county's residents' needs, seeking to improve or increase long-term rentals. It also limits, and in some cases wants to phase out transient vacation rentals in order to accommodate that long-term occupancy. Those are very important policies that I discussed earlier. Importantly, also, the general plan recognizes the importance of economic contributions to the visitor-serving industry. TVR use in the apartment districts has been allowed, or not actually TVRs, but transient use has been allowed in the apartment districts since 1960. However, the stated purpose and intent of the apartment districts is also to provide for higher density long-term residential housing. Apartment districts are mainly located in close proximity to the shoreline, in prominent tourist areas, West Maui and South Maui. Over time, while many of these units were multifamily units, as a result of visitor demand, hosting platforms increasing, resulted in seeing more increased PVRDs in apartment districts. The Commission is aware that, as attached to the report before you, we received a significant number of public correspondence attached to the report. Additionally, we received public correspondence after the posting of the agenda, which is also attached to the agenda noted as documents received after posting. As part of that correspondence, we actually received 2 letters of correspondence that I want to make note of. One was from Councilmember Sinensi. The other one was from the Maui Chamber of Commerce, both requesting that, or at least Councilmember Sinensi requesting that the Haunted Advisory Committee...
Chair, we lost audio. This is Michael Hopper. We lost audio.
Thank you. Can you hear us now?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Probably check with the members too.
Members, can you hear us? Yes. We got hands up. Carry on.
Thank you. So, as I mentioned, we received a request from Councilmember Sinensi that the Haunted Advisory Committee review this matter and provide input to the Maui Planning Commission. And for the Maui Chamber of Commerce, a request for South Maui Advisory Committee to provide input to the Planning Commission. There's a specific process outlined for advisory committee review and Maui Planning Commission. These are advisory committees to the Maui Planning Commission, so the Maui Planning Commission has to determine whether these advisory committees will provide input or not. So the department is seeking the Maui Planning Commission's input on these 2 requests. If directed as such, then the department would have to take these items before the both advisory committees, and that input must be considered by the Planning Commission before we provide final recommendations from the Planning Commission to the Council. Real quickly, I'm going to go over the proposed code amendments themselves. This is a lot. I'm not going to go over any of this really in any detail, but the highlighted area in section 19.12020 identified as subsection G identifies the use as transit vacation rentals in the apartment district. That section in its entirety, as highlighted in yellow, is being removed. The other permitted uses will be allowed to continue. There are other relatively minor code amendments that are...
excuse me, if you're online, please mute your mic. Thank you.
There are other relatively minor code amendments being done to section 19.32 and 19.37, more or less to clean up and remove reference to transit vacation rentals in apartment districts. Section 19.12025 is being removed, as well as that was actually an ordinance that was adopted in 2023 to allow the conversion of property from transit vacation rentals to long-term residential use if owners decided to do that. So that section would no longer apply with this ordinance, is subsequently being removed. We are adding section C1 to 19.500.110, which is our non-conforming uses section. This would allow or establishes or identifies actually that the county has the power to phase out certain non-conforming uses, such as the transit use in the apartment districts that we have before us, as outlined per Hawaii revised statutes, and that's just a section that's being added. That concludes my presentation at the time. I am now going to turn it over to Matt, who will provide a little bit more context in regards to this proposal.
You know, I mean, the shit that they've been putting up on their site shows that they already have an opinion.
Excuse me, if you're online, please mute yourself. Thank you. All of your patience, we're just waiting for the technology to catch up with us, and we'll get going here in a second.
Fine. How are your kids?
Everybody online,
Thank
your
you.
mics are hot. You might want to mute yourself.
Hey, aloha, non-alert fans. Paul Weaver here, reporting at the County Council Commission with the Planning Commission.
Here we go. Okay.
Live. We're going to come back to you in just a few minutes when we start hearing public testimony. So stay tuned to Maui Alert for that. This happened. Was here live from the county meeting. We'll be back shortly.
Yes.
I promise we practiced this yesterday and none of this happened, so thank you.